For the past few months, Middle Eastern politics has kept the entire world on edge. While relations between the United States and Iran have never been cordial, recent events have brought both nations to a point of no return. To understand whether the U.S. will attack Iran, we must look beyond bilateral enmity and analyze the global geopolitical balance. Currently, the situation is so volatile that a single spark could set the entire region ablaze. The bitterness between the U.S. and Iran is not new, but in recent years, the U.S. withdrawal from the nuclear deal and the imposition of strict sanctions have added fuel to the fire. Iran's nuclear program remains a major threat to the U.S., and countries like Israel are consistently pressuring Washington, arguing that military action is necessary to stop Tehran. However, attacking Iran will not be easy. Iran's military strength is far more organized and formidable than that of Iraq or Afghanistan. Beyond its advanced missile arsenal, Iran commands a vast network of proxy groups capable of targeting American assets across the Middle East. How likely is a U.S. attack? Analyzing current circumstances, the likelihood of a full-scale ground invasion seems low, but the possibility of surgical strikes or drone attacks remains high. Modern American politics and its economy cannot sustain another prolonged war, especially since the Russia-Ukraine and Israel-Hamas conflicts have already disrupted global supply chains. Nevertheless, if Iran takes a step that completely halts oil supplies in the Red Sea or the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. may feel it has no choice but to strike. While diplomatic efforts continue, both sides remain in a standoff. Another factor is the American political climate and changing government policies. Some U.S. leaders believe Iran cannot be stopped through dialogue alone, while others argue a new war would be catastrophic for America. Iran understands this dynamic well. It demonstrates its power, but generally avoids a direct head-on collision with the U.S. However, wars are often triggered by misunderstandings rather than planning. If a drone attack results in significant American casualties, the pressure on the U.S. president for retaliation would make an attack inevitable. The aftermath: a horrific scenario. If war breaks out, the first and most devastating impact will be on the global economy. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, through which nearly one-third of the world's crude oil passes. If Iran blocks this route, petrol and diesel prices could double or triple overnight. This would lead to skyrocketing inflation and a severe global recession. Countries like India, which import most of their oil from the Middle East, would face a massive challenge in managing their economies. From a military perspective, this war would not remain confined to two nations. It would engulf the entire Middle East. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and militant groups in Iraq would intensify attacks on U.S. and Israeli targets in support of Iran. This means Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE would likely be dragged into the conflict. The U.S. would have to contend with Iran's mountainous terrain and superior missile technology, a nightmare for any modern army. This could become the most destructive war of the century, with casualties in the millions. Impact on India. For India, this situation is a choice between the devil and the deep blue sea because of its deep ties with both the U.S. and Iran. India has the Chabahar port project in Iran, which is vital for reaching Central Asia, while the U.S. is India's largest trading partner. In the event of war, inflation in India could rise so sharply that managing the national budget would become nearly impossible. Furthermore, millions of Indians work in the Middle East. Ensuring their safety and evacuating them would create a massive humanitarian crisis. India's foreign policy will face its ultimate test if pressured to take sides. A disruption in Iranian oil would force India to buy expensive oil from other sources, increasing the current account deficit and weakening the rupee. Additionally, instability in the Middle East could allow terrorist organizations to resurface, threatening India's internal security. Therefore, India consistently advocates for diplomatic dialogue to keep the situation under control. Is there a path to peace? Global powers like China and Russia could also get involved, potentially turning this into a third world war. China has a 25-year strategic agreement with Iran and would not want the U.S. to gain control over the country. Russia also views Iran as a strong ally. Thus, a U.S. attack would face not just Iranian resistance but indirect opposition from these superpowers. The need of the hour is for the UN and global leaders to bring both parties to the table and attempt to revive the nuclear deal in a new format. Conclusion: a U.S. attack on Iran would be a decision with consequences felt for centuries. War is never a solution. It only creates new problems. We have seen the fates of Iraq, Libya, and Syria, and Iran is larger and more powerful than all of them. To avoid global catastrophe, diplomatic channels must remain open, and sovereignty must be respected. One hopes that leaders on both sides act with wisdom and choose the path of peace over war.
To stay updated with news like this, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm your host, Senan, signing off for India News 7. Thanks for watching.